this year's Spotlight theme is called Unconventional with Purpose. And as I was preparing my speech for this, I asked myself, why did we call it that? And so the answer came to me late one night as I was scrolling LinkedIn, because that's what one does when they try to go cold turkey on Instagram. And I saw this post from Lynn. And then I was like, this all makes sense now. Lynn just wanted an excuse to call all the Wattle Fellows weird after one long year with us. So honestly, that's perfect for me, because for the people who know me, I feel like I'm a pretty weird guy. As a kid, I hated it, as I just wanted to fit in, but as I've gotten older, I've realized being weird means you aren't basic. And I'd just like to tell you a few things to outline, I guess, to let you know what I'm talking about. I love planes. Enough said. I like milk a lot. I love milk. So much so that when I was stress eating, writing this speech, I drank 2 liters of milk in one day, which my housemate Faith can attest to. And I've just got a warning on my dating profile, letting people know. So today, I want to share 3 stories about how this concept of weirdness has followed my journey in sustainability. My first story is about how I got into sustainability in a way that felt a bit weird. It was through a bank internship. And banks are not exactly the first things that come to mind when you think about sustainability leadership.
Now might be a good time to say this disclaimer that the thoughts shared tonight are mine and mine.
For those who don't know me, I work at this bank. So you might be asking, how did a bank get me into sustainability? Sorry. Well, in the summer of 2022, I worked on a project evaluating the actions that the bank could take to assist corporations in the green transition. The takeaway was clear. If we delay action, we're left in a hotter and economically weaker Australia. But if we act early and invest in the transition, Australia thrives in a net zero world. It was weird to see sustainability through an economic lens at first, but it deeply resonated with me and showed me a clear pathway in which I could contribute to meaningful change. The next story I want to tell you about is how I felt weird joining the Wattle Fellowship. When I told my friends, who mostly work in traditional corporate roles, that I joined Wattle, their reaction was something like this. Once again, I was the weird one. Now, before you judge my friends too harshly, they're not terrible people, I promise. At worst, they're indifferent, and if pressed more, most do care about sustainability. But I believe that in the corporate world, sustainability is still fundamentally misunderstood and often seen as a nice to have instead of the genuine risks to business that it actually is. And I'll touch on this a bit more in my next story. The slides aren't really playing well with me tonight. So let's go back to my internship back in early 22. As a part of our project, my fellow interns and I proposed one simple idea. It was groundbreaking. Stop lending to fossil fuel companies without credible transition plans. We were told by some senior bankers it was naive, and a few people even rolled their eyes. So I found it very fascinating that 2 years later, in August 2024, CommBank became the first major bank to commit to exactly that. So how did that shift happen? Well, much of the progress we've seen in corporate sustainability has come from outside in the form of activism, public pressure, and shareholder lawsuits. Take Guy and Kim Abrahams, who in 2017 sued CommBank for failing to adequately disclose the climate risk in its 2016 annual report. Their case subsequently pushed the board to publicly recognize climate change as a material financial risk, and every year since then, the bank has integrated that into their way of doing business. External actions such as this have changed the conversation and moved sustainability from an ESG tick box to a boardroom priority. But my own experience showed that external pressure isn't always enough. There's still often a gap in understanding between those calling for change and the people making decisions inside institutions. That's why internal advocacy matters. CommBank didn't have to make that decision in 2024, and it might have even hurt their short-term profitability. But it happened because there were people inside the bank who genuinely believed climate risk would have significant financial impacts and they made that case clear to leadership. They explained how floods could affect supply chains and grind economic activity to a halt. They showed that ignoring climate wasn't just bad ethics, it was bad business. These internal advocates inside the system turned a dismissed idea into a leadership stance on climate. So, why am I telling you these stories? Well, because corporations wield enormous power and they make daily decisions that shape our future. Changing the system takes both pressure from the outside and actions from within. We need people on the inside who understand how these institutions work and will make the case for sustainability in ways decision makers will hear. Real change happens when we work together. So if you're someone who believes in sustainability and you see opportunities to speak up, shift perspectives, or challenge old norms, don't be afraid to embrace being weird. Because history shows us what feels weird today will become tomorrow's new normal. Thank you.